Hey guys, this is Zerk's What If, and welcome back to part 3 of What If Yuji Was Like Yoriichi. I want to thank you guys again for the support on the last two videos. I didn't think that I'd be getting this much support this early on, but I greatly appreciate all of you, and I will continue to try to make as many What Ifs as I can. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into this. After the battle had ended between Yuji and Hanami, with Yuji taking out the curse in one strike, the barrier cast upon the Jujutsu students would then fall, as Gojo Satoru would be seen floating above the battlefield. He would scan the battlefield, seeing that the cursed spirit had already been taken care of, and would note that Yuji's growth has been exponential, telling himself that he would need to train Yuji even further, knowing what's to come later down the line. As Gojo would teleport down to where Yuji was, he would put his blindfold back on and smile. He would then tell Yuji about how impressed he is with his progress in Jujutsu sorcery, saying he knows it's only been a while since he's become a Jujutsu sorcerer, but his growth is exponential. Meanwhile, in the background, Mahito would manage to steal the Cursed Womb's death paintings 1 through 3, along with a couple of Sukuna's fingers, knowing that Hanami had been killed, thanking Hanami for their sacrifice. Back at Jujutsu High, Yoriichi would call on Gojo and Yuji. He would proceed to tell them about how special grade cursed objects were taken, and inform them that it was the work of the Patch Face curse. Yuji hearing this, his eye would twitch. He would think to himself, that's more people that have died because I wasn't able to take out the curse. With Gojo patting him on the back and telling him that everything would be alright, as they would try to figure out their planning for the next weeks to come. Gojo would tell Yuji to go check on Megumi and to come back later because he has something to tell him. Yuji nodding and heading towards the healing ward. As Yuji and Nobara would meet up, they would go meet Megumi as he was in the healing ward. As they would make it to the healing ward, Yuji would express to Megumi about how sorry he is for not being able to make it sooner, telling him that he's glad that he wasn't seriously hurt. Megumi telling Yuji that he didn't need to worry. He wasn't hurt that bad, so it was okay. This is where Megumi would comment to Yuji that he has gotten a lot stronger, and the gap between Yuji and himself has only gotten bigger, with Nobara stating that she also believes the gap between all of them is way too far, with both Nobara and Megumi promising that they'll get stronger to catch up to Yuji. Yuji would smile, telling them that he believes in both of them, and that they could catch up anytime that they wanted. As the day would end, Yuji would leave where Megumi was, and return to Gojo like he had asked earlier. As the two finally meet up, Gojo would then tell Yuji that they weren't going to waste any time at all. He wanted Yuji to explain that feeling that he got, back to when he fought that one swordsman that had looked exactly like him. Yuji couldn't explain the feeling to Gojo, but it was like his body had fought with everything that it had to stay alive, forcefully pushing out cursed energy. Gojo would scan Yuji's body and smirk. He would then tell Yuji to activate his curse technique real quick. Yuji would do so, breathing in. This is where Gojo would tell him that he believes Yuji could keep that state by constantly breathing the way that he's doing now, telling Yuji that he believes if he constantly breathes like that, he can stay at his peak. So during any downtime or throughout the day at all, he wants Yuji to continue breathing as if he was using his technique. And while he'd be breathing, he'd also be training with Gojo. Gojo would tell Yuji to not stop breathing like that at all, and even to keep breathing like that in his sleep. A couple days would pass, and Yuji would have gotten the hang of it, Gojo being impressed that it was only able to take this kid a couple of days for something that seemed somewhat impossible. With Yuji telling Gojo that he noticed that his lung capacity has gotten even larger, allowing him to intake more air. But the more air he was able to take in, the faster his blood would begin to flow, heating up his body even more. Gojo would then ask Yuji if he remembers that day, what he told him about what happened when he fought that swordsman, about how his mark got larger, and everything just felt right. Yuji would tell him that he remembers. Gojo would tell Yuji to remember that feeling, and remember what he felt during that time. Yuji would tell Gojo that he remembers a hot sensation in his forehead. This is when an idea would pop up in Gojo's head. He would ask Yuji if he's ever tried to channel cursed energy into the mark, with Yuji saying that he's never thought of it like that. Gojo would tell him to think of it as an extension of his own body, and not just some weird scar that he has on his forehead. He believes that Yuji's mark is actually connected to him. Yuji would nod and concentrate as hard as he could, feeling the flow of cursed energy inside of his body, watching it flow, and then connecting it to the scar on his forehead. He would do as Gojo told him, thinking of the scar as an extension of his body. He would then begin to feed cursed energy into the scar. As he would do so, the scar would grow in size. Gojo telling Yuji that he's really quick to pick up on things, and it may be just because he has an awesome teacher like him. As Yuji would get the hang of pouring cursed energy into his scar, Gojo would then tell them that they're going to spar for a bit, telling Yuji to remember to keep up his breathing and to pour cursed energy into that scar. As a couple weeks would pass, all three of the freshmen of the Jujutsu High School would begin their training, with Nobara and Megumi becoming even stronger than they do in canon due to the fact that they were trying to catch up to Yuji. As the trio's training would come to an end, the three would be much stronger, with Megumi being able to summon more Shikigami than he was earlier and utilizing his shadow to fight more, relying more on strategic fighting than straight out brawling. Nobara finding new ways to control her nails and cursed energy control overall, with Yuji being able to use total concentration breathing constant, while also being able to keep his mark fully formed without any cursed energy drawback. Also with the help of Gojo being able to utilize reverse curse technique, with Megumi and Nobara noting that the gap between them has only gotten even further. As the next day would come about, the freshman trio would then get new news about a mission, Gojo sending them to Nita, one of the assistant managers for Jujutsu High. She would explain to the trio that it would seem as if that there was a cursed spirit looming about and they were killing people, explaining to them about a thread that would connect their deaths, with her saying that the most likely explanation is that there were three of them that were cursed, and it took years for it to manifest. Megumi would point out that all the dates and locations were different, and question if it was even the same cursed spirit that was doing the same thing. With this part, most of the story would go the same, where they would investigate the cursed spirit, noting that all of the people that were killed had jumped from a bridge. The place was known for suicides and a hotspot for paranormal activity. After the trio would investigate, they would meet back up with Nita and tell her about it. Nobara would suggest that they might need to start over from scratch, but Yuji would tell her that there was a 100% death rate. They can't waste any time if they don't want the curse to claim more victims. Yuji would tell her that he wants to save as many people as he can before anybody else dies. As they would continue to talk about it, one of the people from earlier would come on his bike to talk to Megumi, telling him about his sister and about how she used to go to the bridge. Megumi would be shocked by the information and try to play it off, but Yuji would notice how shaken he was. Later in the night, Megumi would try to go off alone to the bridge during the nighttime, thinking that since it has something to do with him, he doesn't want to put anybody else in danger. But before he could even take another step further, both Yuji and Nobara would be right behind him, disappointed that Megumi didn't want to share anything about himself. They would tell Megumi that he doesn't need to share everything, but to at least trust them since they're all friends. Yuji would tell Megumi that if exercising this curse allowed them to save his sister, he wouldn't waste any more time. Megumi would smile, thanking both of his friends for being there with him. All three of them would get together. They would cross through the barrier and enter the curse's domain. There would be a mole-like cursed spirit inside. However, one of the cursed womb death paintings that Mahito and Kenjaku had stolen from earlier would enter into the curse's domain. As Megumi would tell Nobara to help him with the mole-like curse, he would tell Yuji to take care of the other curse that had entered the domain, so it wouldn't get in their way. The curse, knowing who Yuji was, would keep his distance as much as possible, or at least try to. Yuji, after his training, would have gotten significantly stronger, so the curse didn't stand a chance at all. It would try to spray a bloodshot at Yuji, but he would easily dodge. Just as quickly as the curse would enter the domain, he would be dispersed by Yuji. Gripping his blade tightly, with his blade burning a bright red color, he would swing horizontally, slashing the curse in half, exploding the curse into a beautiful bright orange. Just as Yuji would be about to regroup with Megumi and Nobara, a portal would form below his feet, catching Yuji off guard. As he would fall through the portal, with Megumi and Nobara yelling, another curse would jump out of the portal, this being the same curse with black hair and red eyes, this being the same curse that had fought Yuji when he was fighting the other swordsman, leaving both Megumi and Nobara to fight two special grade curses, one of the curses being the special grade finger bearer curse that was stronger than the one that they fought in the juvenile center, and the other special grade curse that Yuji had seen while he was fighting the other swordsman. As Yuji would make it to the other side of the portal, he would be caught off guard, trying to immediately turn around and go back through the portal. But before he could, it would already have closed. Yuji would be in the middle of the forest, worried about what had happened to his friends, and worried if they were going to be okay. This is where Kokushibo would come into the picture, telling Yuji about how nice it is to see him again, telling him that he noticed that he has gotten a lot stronger. He knows that their battle was short-lived earlier, and he hopes that Yuji can give him the fight of his life this time. This is when Yuji would also notice two other cursed spirits. One would be a cursed spirit with markings on his face, with brown hair. The other spirit would have a very revealing outfit, with white cuffs around his wrist, with a small patch of hair. The first curse with the marking on his face would ask Yuji, the curse spirit that was sent inside of that domain, what happened to it? Yuji would tell the curse spirit that he exorcised it, with the curse spirit replying, so you killed him. The markings on the spirit's face would then spread, as blood would begin to erupt out of it. Yuji, being surrounded, would only calm himself and still his resolve. He has people that he needs to save, so all of them will be dying right here, right now. Yuji would grip his sword as tightly as he can, turning it a hot red color, with Kokushibo noting that he can feel the heat from his blade from there. He would try to go after the weaker curses first, but Kokushibo would stop him, blocking his initial attack and flinging him away with a swipe of his sword. But Yuji wouldn't let up. He'd rush back in, but this time at Kokushibo, seeing as he was the stronger of the three. But as their fight was going on, another fight back in the domain was happening. Megumi and Nobara would be against the finger bearer curse and another curse with black hair and red eyes. This curse spirit was able to utilize teleportation. Nobara would try to hit the curse with her nails, but he just teleport in and out, separating them, making sure Nobara couldn't help out Megumi, and vice versa. Megumi would simply scream to Nobara, telling her to simply survive until he can take out the curse spirit, with Nobara telling him that he'd better do the same thing. Megumi, fighting as hard as he could, would only realize that this curse was insanely strong. Trying to utilize his divine dog in as many curses as he can, the curse would simply outspeed him, punching Megumi square in the gut and sending him towards a wall. Nobara, seeing this, would turn around and scream, telling Megumi to get up, but as she turned back around, the curse would be right in front of her face, punching her in the face, sending her towards another wall. As they would be sitting to the wall, Megumi would recall his training with Gojo. Gojo telling him to freely think about his potential and what he could actually do as a Jujutsu sorcerer. As Megumi would wake up, he would consider using a summoning ritual that would ultimately sacrifice himself, but he would then decide against it. Thinking back on Gojo's words again, Megumi would then begin smiling. He would begin laughing with a crazed expression. Megumi saying forget it. He would begin to picture a future stronger version of himself, being able to bring out the deepest shadows and surpass all his limits, to catch up to Yuji. This is when Megumi would activate his domain expansion, Chimera Shadow Garden. Megumi would pushing himself, calling his nose to bleed, but he's satisfied with the result. Kugisaki, seeing this, even though she was dazed, acknowledging Megumi, noticing that he's gotten even stronger, would then decide that she needs to push herself as well. Megumi, knowing that even if his domain is incomplete, he believes that this should be enough to win. He would take out the finger bearer and help Nobara in any way that he could, pushing out as much cursed energy as he could. He didn't matter how nasty the domain looked, he just needed it to work in his favor. As Megumi and the Shadow Bearer would begin fighting, Nobara began planning something meticulous for the other cursed spirit. She would begin setting up nails in advance, throwing nails in what seemed like random directions, with the curse asking her if she's gone senile from being crashed into the wall. Her also throwing nails into the air and having them hover over her. The curse teleporting around, trying to get leeway on Nobara, would finally understand what Nobara was actually doing. Even though her nails were going out somewhat indiscriminately, the places where he would teleport would become even more limited, this causing Nobara to be able to fire nails in his direction. With his spots being limited to be able to teleport to, she would be able to guess more freely to where the curse would be able to come out from. As the curse would be trying to find a spot to be able to teleport in and do some damage, he would teleport onto one of her nails. This is where Nobara would scream, "Gotcha!" Using hairpin, the nail below the cursed spirit would explode, blowing his leg off in the process. As the second Nobara would see the curse's leg, she wouldn't hesitate at all. With one of her nails already floating in the air, she would send one of the nails straight towards the leg, pinning it to the wall. As she would rush towards the nail that was pinned on the wall, the cursed spirit would then figure out what she's trying to do. Panicking, the cursed spirit would try to stop her again, but again, he would accidentally make a mistake, teleporting on one of the nails that were in the vicinity. Again, Nobara would use hairpin, blowing the curse up again, and as she'd make it to the leg that was pinned to the wall, she would strike the nail, screaming resonance. As the curse, being caught in between his teleportation, would crash into the ground. Nobara would then proceed to send all the flying nails that were around her straight at the cursed spirit, with each one striking the cursed spirit. Megumi, on the other hand, with his newfound domain and demon dog totality, would continue to strike at the finger bearer, with the finger bearer using a wave of cursed energy to try to disperse the shadows. Both Megumi and Nobara would be closing in for their final move. With the finger bearer cursed thinking that he had dispersed Megumi's shadows, he would catch Megumi behind him, striking at Megumi, blowing a hole straight through his chest. But little did the finger bearer know, this was only a shadow clone, with Megumi and Totality being right behind him. Totality would swing in, taking both of the finger bearer's arms off. At the same time, Nobara with her curse spirit, she would use hairpin once again, making the nails that were already dug inside of the curse spirit dig even deeper while bursting with cursed energy. Both curse spirits being on the edge of death, both Megumi and Nobara would rush in to finish off the curse, with both of them landing a respective black flash, finishing off each of their curses respectively, with both of them falling out and asking each other if they thought Yuji was okay. Going back to where Yuji is, he would be continuing his fight with Kokushibo. With the other two curse spirits supporting Kokushibo, Kenjaku had told the curses that their job was simply not to kill Yuji, but to allow Sukuna to be able to take over, as they don't even have to defeat Yuji, they just need to get him to be tired out, saying that as long as they force feed him the fingers, Sukuna will gain control, even if only for a little bit. That's when Sukuna will be able to make a pact with Yuji. As the fight would continue, Yuji would be holding his own. He was putting up a decent fight with Kokushibo, being able to land more hits and do a lot more damage. However, it'd just be the other two cursed spirits that would stop him from doing lethal damage. He wanted to be able to take them out, but every time he would try, Kokushibo would stop him. Yuji knew he had gotten stronger, but somehow, it just wasn't enough. Kokushibo would then say to Yuji, "You've gotten a lot stronger since our last fight. I commend you for gaining this much strength in such a short amount of time. But sadly, I have a mission to complete." This is when the cursed energy on Kokushibo would begin to change. From out of his head, he would grow 2 more pairs of eyes, and the sword that he once bared would become a grotesque-looking flesh sword. Sukuna, looking from the inside, would become interested in Kokushibo, saying that, even though the man says that he's from the Heian era, he has never met someone like that. He would have known if someone that strong was living when he was. He must have died before Sukuna ever got the chance to meet him. This is when Kokushibo would breathe in. Moon breathing. 8th form. Moon dragon ringtail. As Kokushibo would slash his blade horizontally, it would seem as if the blade itself was growing in size. Yuji would be able to dodge the initial slash, but it was the dozens of crescent moon blades that went along its path that he couldn't. Yuji thought he had gotten stronger. He thought his training with Gojo was enough to be able to stop any curse that would get in his way. He started to reminisce about that time when he was fighting the cursed spirit with Todo, the move that had allowed him to obliterate a special grade cursed spirit in just one strike. If he wanted to do anything, he needed to land that now. As Yuji would take a deep breath in, he would say, "Sun breathe," but in the middle of his sentence, he would find that Kokushibo's blade was inside of his chest. Even as the blade would go through his chest, he would still attempt to swing his sword. He was watching Kokushibo the whole time. He couldn't understand how he was able to get in front of him that fast. He knew whatever transformation that Kokushibo had just undergone was crazy, but he didn't know it was this crazy. This is when Kokushibo would tell Yuji, "It doesn't matter how much faster or stronger you've gotten. I have hundreds of years of battle experience. To me, you're nothing more than just a little kid swinging around a toy sword." As Kokushibo would say this, he would then twist the blade, causing Yuji to spill out blood. This is when Yuji would seemingly fall down unconscious. This is when the other cursed spirit, with marks on his face, would walk up to Yuji, wanting to kill him for killing his brother. Kokushibo would then stop the other cursed spirit, telling him that he'd better not get in their way. They have a mission to fulfill. This is when Kokushibo would pull out a scroll-looking object. As he would unravel the scroll, there would be 13 of Sukuna's fingers. He would pick up Yuji and force him to eat all 13 fingers in one sitting. As Yuji's body would register the fingers, he would begin to grow markings on his body. This is when Sukuna would awaken, telling Kokushibo to let go of him. Kokushibo, feeling the malice of Sukuna, would then back up. Sukuna would then smile, exhilarated, since this was the first time he had full control of this body. He would ask Kokushibo, knowing that there's no way he just set him, the king of curses, free without any particular reason. Kokushibo would then explain to Sukuna that he needs to make a pact with the kid, saying that on October 31st, they would orchestrate an attack to be able to seal Gojo Satoru, telling him about Kenjaku's plan. Sukuna would then laugh, telling Kokushibo that he has something much better in mind, but he would entertain Kokushibo and Kenjaku's idea. He would tell Kokushibo that he would make him a deal. If Kokushibo was able to land at least one strike onto Sukuna, he would indulge on their little plan on the 31st. However, Sukuna was going to do things his way, with Kokushibo saying, "All I have to do is get a hit on you, correct?" With Sukuna nodding, saying, "Those were the rules." Kokushibo would tell Sukuna that he better abide by his own rules, saying that he's heard so much about the King of Curses, with Sukuna telling Kokushibo to stop stalling and that he can start the fight whenever he wanted to. Kokushibo would tell the other two curses to retreat, as this would be his fight. Kokushibo would then rush in, trying to begin the fight and end it as quickly as possible. Sukuna would just smile. Kokushibo would breathe in, moon breathing, 10th form, drilling slashes, moon through bamboo leaves. Kokushibo would create 3 rotating circular saw-like slashes. As they would reach Sukuna, Sukuna would dodge the initial slashes with ease, noting that he just loved the body that he was in right now. As Sukuna would dodge the initial 3 slashes, there would be tiny crescent moon blade slashes also following the path. Sukuna, seeing these, would simply use Dismantle to counter each slash. Kokushibo would then try to go in for another attack. Moon breathing, 16th form, Moonbow half moon. Slashing with his sword, he would send 6 curved slashes straight towards Sukuna, with again a numerous amount of smaller crescent moon blades, but Sukuna would simply laugh, using Dismantle again and asking Kokushibo if that's really all he's got. Kokushibo would dash in again, trying to land an attack on Sukuna, but nothing was working. Sukuna would simply dodge out of the way, just flaunting about how good his body was, saying that Kokushibo bore the same mark that he did, but something was different about Yuji's body, saying that Kokushibo probably worked twice as hard to get the body that this young man had right now, while Yuji was just born with his body, not needing to put in that much extra work. If this kid were to train as hard as he could every day, I dare say that he probably could be on par with me. As Kokushibo would not be letting up his attack, he would continue attacking Sukuna, giving him absolutely everything that he had. This is when Kokushibo would breathe in again, letting off another form of his moon breathing. This is when Sukuna would say, "Oh yeah, you guys use this weird breathing method. I guess I should try now." Sukuna, being in Yuji's body, would breathe in as he usually does, feeling his entire body heat up. He would close the gap between him and Kokushibo instantly, hitting the right side of Kokushibo's chest. Kokushibo's right arm would blast off. With that one attack, Kokushibo would have lost his sword and the right side of his torso. Regenerating as fast as he could, Kokushibo would try to launch a counterattack, but Sukuna would simply hit him again, blasting the other side of his body away. This is when Kokushibo would realize that he needs to gain distance on Sukuna. He would jump back. He would take in a deep breath and recuperate himself. He knew that Sukuna, being titled the King of Curses, was one of the strongest Jujutsu sorcerers that had ever lived. With him remembering that Kenjaku had told him if he tried to fight Sukuna, he would probably die. Kokushibo would then shake his head, trying to get any negative thoughts out of his mind and focus on the battle. He would stare at Sukuna with his 6 eyes, telling himself that he only had to land one hit for everything to come into fruition. He would gather himself, while Sukuna would be standing on the other side of the forest, waiting for Kokushibo to make his next move. This is when Kokushibo would proceed to do a barrage of attacks. First, it was the 7th form, then the 6th form, then the 14th form, then the 10th form. Over and over, Kokushibo would be absolutely relentless, letting off slash after slash, with Sukuna just dodging and sending slashes of his own. This is when Kokushibo would then perform his 16th form again, but surprising Sukuna, Kokushibo would have landed a small slash on Sukuna's hand. Sukuna would clap, congratulating Kokushibo, saying that he did a really good job. Out of all the people he had fought in the Heian era, he would 100% be the strongest one. This is when Sukuna would agree to go along with Kenjaku's plans. He tells Kokushibo that he will make a pact with Yuji, but they will have to work off Sukuna's time. There are a lot of interesting things in play, and Sukuna can't wait for all of them to unfold. As the battle would come to its conclusion, Kokushibo would then leave, telling Sukuna that he can't wait until the new world will be born. Kokushibo taking his leave, Sukuna would then head over to where Megumi and Nobara were, Seeing Megumi's progress and seeing that there was someone with potential like him, he would take an interest also in Megumi. This is when Sukuna would begin to sit down and talk to Yuji inside of his innate domain. He would tell Yuji that he can heal him, but under one condition. Yuji would allow him to take over his body for 1 minute when Sukuna says the words in chain, with Yuji immediately just saying no. Sukuna said that he would promise not to hurt anyone during that 1 minute, and if he wouldn't agree to these terms, he would just kill his friends right here and now. This is when Yuji would be torn. This is when Sukuna would say, "Then how about this? Me and you can duke it out right now, to the death. If you win, we'll do things your way, but if I win, we do things my way." Also stating that if Sukuna were to win, Yuji would forget. Yuji would reluctantly agree, seeing as his friends were on the line here. He would prepare himself to fight, but the second he would be about to engage with Sukuna, his head would already be rolling off his body. As Yuji would wake up, he would find himself next to a bed with Megumi, as all three of the students would have been found and taken back to Jujutsu High. With it being noted that Nobara and Megumi had taken down 2 special grade curse spirits, while Yuji had encountered 3, and even though he wasn't able to take down any, he would be found unconscious. As Yuji would scan the room, he would see Gojo. Gojo would only be scanning Yuji, only to realize that he had ingested a lot more of Sukuna's fingers. He would ask Yuji if he knows what had happened at all, seeing as he found him there lying unconscious on the ground. Yuji would tell Gojo that he doesn't remember what happened at the end there, but he does remember fighting 3 special grade curse spirits. He recalls fighting that same swordsman that he fought a while ago, but there were 2 extra special grades there. This is when Yuji would have a sour look on his face. He would tell Gojo that even after all the training they had done together, even after everything, he was still weak. He thought after the training with Gojo, he would be unstoppable. Gojo, trying to lighten the mood, would tell Yuji that he was ranked up to grade 1 sorcerer, with Yuji just saying that that title didn't matter. He was still weak and he needed to change that. Gojo, feeling bad for Yuji, would then tell him, "No matter how strong you think you actually are, Yuji, there will always be someone that is much stronger than you. But you shouldn't let that get you down. You may have lost the battle today, but what really matters is that you survived and lived to tell the story for another day." This is when Yuji would nod and take in the words that Gojo had told him. Behind the scenes, we would see Kenjaku, Kokushibo, and Mahito getting together. Kenjaku would be impressed that Kokushibo was able to survive against the King of Curses, while also allowing him to make a binding vow with Yuji. Kokushibo would tell Kenjaku that Sukuna agreed to go along with their plans, but he said he would do things his way. Kenjaku had already figured that Sukuna would have done things his way, but as long as Sukuna is on their side, he couldn't care less. As Kenjaku, Kokushibo, and Mahito would be discussing the next step in their plans, unbeknownst to them, the cursed spirit that had gone along with Kokushibo would be fighting current thoughts in his head, as this cursed spirit was able to feel the deaths of his siblings very strongly. When Kokushibo stabbed his sword through Yuji, and Yuji seemingly fell unconscious, the cursed spirit would have felt Yuji's death just as he felt his brother's death prior to fighting Yuji at all. This cursed spirit, of course, being Choso. This is when Eso would come in and ask Choso if he was okay. This is where Choso would explain to Eso that Yuji was their brother, and that he believed that they were fighting on the wrong side. And even if they were fighting on the right side, he refused to fight his brother. Being another brother meant that he had to protect Yuji no matter what happened. So without Kenjaku, Kokushibo, or Mahito noticing, he would tell Eso that they need to get out of there, telling him that they need to try to get in contact with Yuji some way, somehow. Back at Jujutsu High, Yuji would simply be training, but unlike the usual training he was doing before, he would kick it up 10 times harder, remembering what Sukuna said when he was in his body, remembering the feeling that Sukuna gave him while he was in his body, remembering every action that Kokushibo had did against him. Instead of being upset at the fact that he had lost at Kokushibo, he would use that anger to get stronger. It was the first time Yuji had taken a major loss. There was nothing he could do in that moment fighting against Kokushibo. Kokushibo was simply too fast and too strong. With him knowing that he had lost, and with him knowing that he had more of Sukuna's fingers fed to him, he knew that at any given moment, if Sukuna were able to take control, All of his friends would be in danger, and the people that he loved had the potential to die. From this moment forward, Yuji promised to himself that no matter what, he wouldn't lose. He would get as strong as he could. He would do whatever it took. With Sukuna inside of Yuji smiling, seeing the lengths that this kid was willing to go simply to get stronger and not allow him to be free. Sukuna saying to himself in his mind that he couldn't wait for Yuji to show him what he had. And this is where I think I'm going to end off part 2. I know this one is a little shorter, but I'm kind of running on like a little bit of time. If anything, I'll probably finish up the rest of this entire series and turning it into a movie, so it's easier to watch and more convenient. But again, thank you for all the support you all have been giving me. I greatly appreciate it. And yeah, thank you. Peace.